What about Bob? That would be Bob Goff, my guest. Well, he's admitting this on the back of his book. As a college student, he spent 16 days in the Pacific Ocean with 5 guys and a crate of canned meat. As a father, he took his kids on a world tour to eat ice cream with the heads of state. He made friends in Uganda, and they liked him so much, he became the Ugandan consul. He pursued his wife for 3 years before she agreed to date him. His grades weren't good enough to get into law school, so he sat on a bench outside the dean's office for 7 days until they finally let him enroll. This is all true, and this is just a slice of the man we are welcoming from San Diego. Bob, your friends call you, what do they call you? The world's best kept secret. Well, you're on national television now, and we are happy to out you right here.
Thanks for having me.
As
Great being here.
Secretly incredible guy, which is what you want all of us to be, secretly incredible.
Yeah, Jesus seemed like he would do all these amazing things. You know, he'd cure somebody who was blind or raise a little girl from the dead. And every time he always said the same thing, like, tell no one, right? And I edge the lawn and want to take out a half-page ad, like Bob edges the lawn, right? Instead, I think God's just saying, be secretly incredible. Like, do these things, but don't make a big deal about them.
Your whole life is so out of the box. You were shot by a good friend as a child. I mean, I don't know how much we can attribute. There was a guy who was he already married, Randy, when you were skipping out and going off into the mountains, and
yeah,
and he came and camped with you, a young life representative, just to keep you from going off the rails.
Yeah, a guy, I just knocked on his door, and he'd hung around at the high school I went to, and you know, I figured he was one of those Christian guys, and I kept my distance. But when I decided to move to Yosemite, then I went to his door. I knocked on a Sunday morning, and he came kind of a little groggy. And I said, hey, I'm going to drop out, move to Yosemite. And he said, after like a minute or two at the door, he disappeared. And when he came back, he had his sleeping bag and his backpack over one arm. And well, we went, and I couldn't get a job, and after a couple days came back. When I got back to his living room, I pull into the driveway, and his girlfriend was over visiting, I guess, and I walk in and I see a microwave and dishes, and then I realize, oh my gosh, this guy had gotten married on Saturday, and I knocked on the door on Sunday morning.
And he made you the priority?
That was the deal. He just kept saying the same thing, I'm with you. And I think that part resonated with me in terms of faith, that idea like Emmanuel, God with us. And I got it, that love isn't something you just like agree with a bunch of stuff that Jesus said, because he kind of took that off the table, right? I can't think of a single time he got all the disciples together and said, just agree with me, right? He said, let's go do stuff. And a guy like Randy said, look, I'm with you, and he was. And I think I came to faith in large part because of experiencing a guy like Randy.
No wonder the title, Love Does Discover a Secretly Incredible Life in an Ordinary World. Well, obviously, you had this in your DNA from the start, because the story, can you capsulize the story of how you got into law school?
Oh, it was nuts. I wanted to be a lawyer in just the worst way, but you have to take a test, the LSAT, and I thought I had the study books, but they were just like books you apply with, and they had a couple practice questions. So I got killed on this exam. So I sent all these applications out, and they all said, you know, forget it. They ran to the bank with my application check. And I thought I'd go to the dean of this one law school I hadn't even heard from, right? I think they figured we both just knew. So they didn't even send the rejection letter. So I met with him, and I like shook hands and looked like in the eyes, like, you know, you're supposed to do, they say on all the books. I said, I'm not really enrolled, and I didn't get on the waiting list, but you have the power to say the words. Like, you could say, just go get your books, and I'd be in. So that was it. He just is already walking me to the door, saying, like, you know, we have many qualified applicants. You're not one of them, but like, see ya. But I sat on the bench outside of his door for the next 7 days.
You stalked him, really?
No kidding. I'd missed most of the 60s. It was like a sit-in. So when he came by each time, I'd just say, just tell me to get my books. And after law school had even started, this is like the second day of law school, I'm not even in and I'm behind. And he just stopped, and without a lot of fanfare, he just said, go get your books. And I did. And that kind of idea, like that we could say the words, like you and I, we could say the words that could launch somebody. That gives me a lot of hope.
That kind of encouragement. And this you are now doing where? for law students, Mr. Lawyer?
They let me teach a nonprofit law at Pepperdine Law School. And I teach there.
Renowned law school.
Yeah, it's terrific. And hey, you know, with the kids that don't get into the class, I get to walk down the hall and, you know, they're sitting on the bench and I say, go get your books. Like, you're in.
I read this to my daughter last night. We laughed till we cried. Seriously, tears, and then we cried. Because every lesson, all the fun, you are a comedian, leads to something that impacted your life and now is reaching the world. Have you gone back to that dean to tell him you're a diplomat and a lawyer? Have a partner in a law firm today? Does he know? I hope he knows.
I met him again later and got to just say a big thanks. And I'm a hugger. Like, I'm not going to shake hands with anyone because this life is
We've
not...
all been hugged here today.
Yeah, this
Everybody.
is not a business trip, doggone it. Like, and we keep saying we're the family guy. Like, I want to act like the family guy. And I know I did this thing that we were talking about that's nuts. I asked this publisher on the last page, I said, could I just put my cell phone number in?
Can you believe it? His phone number is in the back of the book, folks.
It's been great. I can't get anything done. I get 40 calls a day. It's terrific.
We won't talk about the emails.
But the whole idea is like God, you know, we keep pointing to him and say, you can talk to him anytime, anywhere about anything. And so I'm just learning about availability. Like, what if we, like, because we're not Jesus, but we're supposed to act like him, and it seemed like with time, he just got more and more available, and we get more and more efficient. And
You're the husband of sweet Maria. You have grown children. You are a partner, as I said, in a law firm in Washington, in Seattle, which you fly to, 2-hour flight to go and do whatever you do there. And you teach in 2 universities. But also, you are the founder of Restore International, a nonprofit organization fighting injustices committed against children in India and Uganda. And the stories here, well, you have to start with the book. But, and I say start with the book. Look at this scripture, Proverbs 31, 8 and 9. I want to put it on the screen. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. For the rights of all who are destitute, speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor. In your book, Bob, you say God pursues us into whatever dark place we've landed. You're going into dark places and dealing with bad guys.
And you use the laws of a particular country. We don't go over and say, like, here's our laws and this is how you need to tune things up. Instead, we say, these are the laws of your country, and now let's go enforce them. Let's go do those and find children that have found their way into jails that haven't found their way into courts. And we say, then let's go try the cases. You know, so I started by buying, you know, buy the law library and like then just start researching the cases and brief them as if we're invited. And I think the people that are following Jesus are invited to a whole lot more things than we think we're invited to. You know what I mean? Like, you just start showing up, and nobody said come over and do this, but you just start doing things, and that's the part.
You say sometimes we have to break the doors down.
Isn't that the deal? Like, if people are saying, like, you know, there's an open door and a closed door, and I get it, everything, but I think you kick a couple in. Like, you just say, like, not always, and it's like with a lot of humility, but a lot of resolve.
I understand there's a warden in Uganda waiting to get his door back.
No
you took
kidding.
the door.
He'd sue me, whatever. Like, when we took, the last kid got out of that jail, I'm like, you don't need a door.
Hallelujah.
So, which has been great. It was so great
goosebumps.
showing up at British Airways with that, you know, and say, like, that's your luggage? I'm like, yeah, I just travel light. A door?
And you're taking some of these students to come and be a part of, well, setting the captives free.
It's been terrific. I mean, I'm a big winner on that. I get to watch these, like, people that have a lot more runway than I have, and they're the fast ponies, and they're going to make incredible stuff. And so oftentimes we, like, kind of rule ourselves out. We say it's not, you know, me, it's for this other person that has title and status. But Jesus never did that. He just got a bunch of losers and said, I'm going to blow your mind.
You drive around California in a car that has flags on it.
Isn't that great?
You're a diplomat.
Because I'm the consul. Isn't that great? Of
they
course
love you
I
so
am.
much.
Oh, and the license plates. I could park anywhere. I could park in this fountain out in front of the building here. Like, you can just, you get to do that. And I have diplomatic immunity. How cool is that?
You probably need it.
No kidding.
But your car was stolen. A car was stolen last year, and you got a skateboard.
Well, I did, because I wanted last year, I like cars and boats and trains and planes, and I thought, you know, I'm not dependent on really anybody. And I wasn't trying to go green, and I could have scratched together enough money to get an old car, but I thought, let me go get a longboard. So I bought this skateboard. Can you imagine? Like the first time I'm pulling out of the driveway with my skateboard, it was like I was on fire because I like just stopped, dropped, and rolled. But like after a year of doing this, I could do a wheelie and everything.
Well, you are a former surfer.
I am.
And you thought you might be a forest ranger or a surfer, but I'm sure God's used all of that background in the life you're living. One of the first points you make, you say, first we need to have our paradigms about the world shifted into truth. That's a big part of what this book is.
I would say, like Jesus said that, you used to think this way, now I want you to think this way. And so really each of the chapters starts out by, I used to think this, but now I think that. And I think that's the way it should be, that we should evolve and we should change if we're really, I've understood sweet Maria Gough more after 26 years.
That would be your wife.
Right? Yes, yeah. 26 years, 1 month and 12 days, but who's counting? Right?
Well, just in case you think you need money, committee, strategy, you're saying no.
You don't.
Just ordinary people doing what God leads you to do, that first step.
Yeah, and you never know what all the steps are, but you always know the next step, right? And the next step is go do stuff. Like, what is it that lights you up? Go do lots of that.
Speaking of being lit up, Donald Miller, who's I'm sure very well known, Blue Like Jazz is one of his most popular books, says you are the single most influential person in his life because of love, because of your love.
Well, I learned a lot from him. And about graciousness and tenderness and all that. You know, one of the things he told me, I would send him a chapter when I was done. And he said, the first time he read a chapter, he said, Bob, and this is a New York Times best-selling author, he says, Bob, our writing would be better if we stopped using the word that. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, like, Bob, think of like that as a cuss word. I'm like, I know some cuss words, that isn't one of them. And he said, like, just take that out of your life. And I don't even know why he said that, but I stopped writing the word that because somebody I trusted said my life would be better if I didn't write it. So I stopped writing it, and you know what? It's better. And that's that same thing with Jesus. He says we could stop writing the word that in our life. Some of the things that are in our life.
Just entrenched.
Just cut it out.
You know, the quotes at the beginning of each chapter could change a person's life. This isn't one of them, but I just wanted to read this. When each of us looks back at all the turns and folds God has allowed in our lives, I don't think it looks like a series of folded over mistakes and do-overs that have shaped our lives. Instead, I think we'll conclude in the end that maybe we're all a little like human origami, and the more creases we have, the better.
Isn't that a fun way to think about it? You
Yeah.
you do something, you go like, oh, how did that happen? Now I just think of it, that's another fold. I'm going to be one of these. You know, it's going to be something beautiful. And I usually can't tell right now. Like some people get it in real time from God, like this is what's happening. For me, it's more like rear view mirror. And I really start seeing those folds and creases as things where God is shaping me, not defining me by my failures, but shaping me into the guy that he wants me to be.
Here's a powerful truth. Secretly incredible people don't measure their value by what they have, but by what they're willing to give up. And you challenge us to the game we played as kids, bigger and better.
Oh, isn't that a great game? Did you do that?
I remember it.
We should go do it right after the show. Like we'll start with a dime and then just see what we can trade up to. And
you can knock on the neighborhood youth groups.
Yeah, you say like, I've got this and what will you trade to? And then my son, Richard, I swear, he started with a dime. He drove home in a Dodge. He had an old pickup truck.
Someone gave him a car?
Isn't that great? Wow. And then it would be a horrible ending to a story if he just kept the truck. So he gave it away. That is the deal. Like, how do we want to end these stories that we're invited into? Because we get to pick any number of alternate endings. Pick a really good one. Pick one that honors God. Pick ones that points people towards Jesus. That's good. And not in a sappy way, but just in a way that looks just like you, just like me.
Because you can't outgive God. We know that, don't we? But we need to put it more to the test. Well, glad you spend your summers in BC. I'm not going to tell where that is because you've got enough people on your calling your cell phone. Bill Hybel, senior pastor of Willow Creek Community Church, writes, if this book does not make your heart beat faster, book the next flight to the Mayo Clinic. So we're going to join him in inviting you to take a heart test. You want to read Love Does. It will I bet it will change your life. It's at our Easter. Here's the info in case you don't have it.